Well, welcome back to Mr. Obsolete's Vintage Homesteading channel. Today we're going to talk about small chainsaws, vintage chainsaws. So we're going to start out with the good, we're going to move on to the bad, and the last ones are going to be the no good ones. So this one is a 1968 Mccullough Minimax 6. And this was the first small saw that sold in big numbers, revolutionized the chainsaw market, opened up a whole new area to the homeowners, people with small yards and stuff like that, where the saws before it were big and heavy and not any good for the type of work where the average guy could use them. This thing is 33 cc's. They made these for a long time, and they made them from 66 to 1999 when Mccullough went out of business. There are a lot of variations on them. So this is, like I say, the first version. Okay, well this is a next evolution. This is a Minimax 35. You've seen this in a lot of my videos. I use these little saws a lot. So this is an early one, has no safety features on it. And as they made them down the road, same basic saw, it's got a chain brake and throttle lock and a few other safety features. And these were one of the most popular saws ever made. One thing on the Minimax 6 here, it wasn't the first small chainsaw on the market. It was these, made by Olson and Rice. They came out in 1966 and were sold till 1973, but they were not successful at all. And I'll talk about this more as we go into this stuff. So, anyway, this one weighs 9.5 pounds. Okay, we'll be back. Well, we'll talk about the good features of these little saws. Like I say, they were powerful, durable, lightweight. The bad thing on them is they're really noisy. The muffler on them is hardly anything. I was out cutting with one a while back and this fell off and I couldn't tell any difference noise-wise when I put it back on. And they're real hard to work on. They're the hardest Mcculloughs of all to work on. So we'll be back with another one here. Well, we're back with another good saw. It's a little John Deere 40V that a friend of mine gave me a while back. About a 1977 model. It was made by Keiretsu Corporation in Japan, but everybody knows them today as Echo. The nice thing about this saw, it's fairly quiet, smooth running, easy to handle, well balanced. One thing on it that's really nice is this little knob here for adjusting the chain oiling. That would be a nice feature on any saw today. So the bads of it, it's not very powerful. I did an upgrade on it. I took the 1/4" pitch chain and bar off it, put a new bar, clutch drum and chain on it to a 3/8 low pitch. It's actually usable now. It's a nice little saw. Bad thing too is there's virtually no parts for them, but this thing had hardly been used. When it was assembled, I don't know if the person that had it or at the factory, but it would only get half throttle, and I'm guessing it was a problem from the factory. So it gets full throttle now and cuts pretty good. So anyway, we'll move on. Well, here's another batch of bad saws. This is a skill saw labeled. This is a Craftsman, both 35 cc. They're both made by Poland. Poland made zillions of these little saws under a whole bunch of different brand names, and they would build them down to a price. Sears would always try to have something really cheap, so the clutch drum on it had a bushing in it, and after a half hour it'd overheat and shatter and make all kinds of noise. I tried all kinds of greases on it, never worked. So I finally found a clutch drum that had a needle bearing in it, put it in it. But the one thing I can say about these, when they do run, which is kind of off and on, they're powerful, they cut good, and they're easy to work on. Bad things about them, they're unreliable, and parts availability is so-so on them, but they made so many and there's still a lot of stuff around. This one's got one unusual thing on it. It's got a odd bar on it. It's made by Oregon. It's called a banana bar, and you can see that it's tapered here on the bottom and straight on the top, and that's supposed to keep it from kicking back, but these things are so underpowered, I don't know why you need it, and you can't turn the bar over because it just won't cut good. It makes the bar run hot. Anyway, like I say, these things had their issues, but once you get them running for a while, they actually cut pretty good. But the thing that affects all these little saws and makes them all finicky is temperature and the bad fuel we have today. If you start out and it's 45, 50 degrees and it's cool, these things run pretty good. Later in the day, come out and it's 65, 70. You have to adjust the carburetors, mess around with them, and they'll vapor lock, which means that the fuel turns into a vapor and then they won't start, and you have to let them sit and cool off. Anyway, we'll be back here with some more bad ones in just a sec. Well, here's a real antique clunker for you. This is a 1958 mono. They and others decided to build cheapo poor man's chainsaws. They bought engines that were made by Power Products and West Bend and Clinton. Clinton made their own chainsaws, but the framework and everything is virtually identical on them. And these were considered a small saw at the time because the big saws of the same era, normal size saws, were really big, like this one. Now here's a real chainsaw. But like I say, they wanted to make cheap low-end chainsaws that anybody could afford, and you know, they thought that they were a good deal. The motors in these, like I say, were proprietary motors that were used in everything: lawnmowers, chainsaws, outboard motors, pumps, generators, everything in the world. I'll be right back with an engine to show you. Okay, here's your little basic Power Products engine. You can see that the cylinder and all this stuff is the same, different flywheel. This was probably used on a lawnmower at some point because it's set up for vertical use instead of horizontal like this one. But yeah, they would build them down to a price. So the good features on these, I guess, if the few that there are, they're very simple and easy to work on. And if you look, you can still find parts for them and stuff. Chains aren't hardly available anymore though. And this one was the super cheapo model. It had a rope start. If you paid a few extra dollars, you'd get a recoil starter on it. One of the bad things on it, among many, other than the weight and stuff like that, is that it has a pumper carb on it so it can run upside down, but the caps on these are open, so if you turn it upside down, the gas and oil will leak out. So see how much this little gem weighs. Oh, 23.5 pounds, a super lightweight. You see there's absolutely no safety features on it. Chain, everything's right out in the open. Exhaust system is just basically a straight tube. These things are out. I've got it primed, so I'll fire it off. You can hear what these old saws sound like. You hear that nasty snap? Sounds just like a crappy new chainsaw. Once more. Put a little bit too much fuel in it. Anyway, you get the idea. Fairly loud. Even though this was considered a small saw in its era, has a lot of displacement, but they don't make much horsepower and they only run about 4,500 RPM, where the new saws run 14,000. So anyway, be back with one that's just a little bit more modern. Well, here's another saw that I consider bad, but I mean for its era, for what it was fine. This is a Clinton D15 made in 1966. The Clinton Engine Company was in business from 1956 until 1982, and they were one of the largest selling small engine builders in the world. They took over a big hunk of the market in the UK and other places in Europe, and they were the second largest selling engine in the US. These have the same typical thing, just a real simple chassis, just a little bit of cast stuff here, no safety features at all. And this one does have a recoil starter, but everything's out in the open. It's really easy to get to adjust it. It has one weird feature. Chainsaw dog here is made so it can move up and down. I'm not sure what their great idea was there, but just something weird. But these engines, Power Products, West Bend, and Clinton, were all just like this. They were just a proprietary engine that was designed to be modified and used on any type of power equipment. So as you can see, the cylinder is vertical on this one, and this one's more of a 45-degree angle, but you know, they use the same shroud and all that stuff. It's what's called a Panther engine. It's two-cycle, of course. But boy, they made a ton of these and they used them in everything you can think of. So be back here, I'll prime this and light it off, and you can see there again, it just has a little straight pipe with an opening down here. It's pretty loud. We'll be back. Okay, we're back. Well, let's see if it'll light off here a little bit. Set it down here. There again, low RPM but pretty barky. These early saws had manual oiling for the bar only, and like I say, everything was very straightforward and simple on them. The good features of these early saws, the engines, they were really good little engines, simple to work on, and everything was right out in the open where you could work on them. Fuel turn on is just a valve right there, choke and stuff down here. And the bad features: weighs 28 pounds, vibrates. All these little saws vibrated a lot, extremely noisy and heavy. So there you have another bad. Move on to the no good. Okay, well, here's our first bad chainsaw. This is an Olson & Rice engine, 29cc, really light and stuff, but the good features are it's cute. That's about it. The bad feature, underpowered, and there's no parts for it. It had a really bad carburetor design. Recoil starter was really weak. You can see that the pulls backwards. The engine runs backwards because it's a gear drive. But they were sold by Sears and everybody else. And that was the first true lightweight commercial saw in the commercial market, but was never successful. But the thing that's weird is the company tried using it and made outboard motors with it, a gas-powered drill, a generator, an outboard motor. Even a handsaw was gas-powered by the same little engine. This is one of them here. Some are rated at 3/4 horse, some are rated at 1 horsepower. But interesting thing about this motor was that after Olson & Rice decided to shut down, they sold the engine design to the Japanese, the TAS, Tanaka company, and they put a good carburetor on it and upgraded the ignition system and brought them back into the US as the Weed Eater, and it was tremendously successful. So just a few changes made all the difference in the world. Now, Olson & Rice was an old company, and what they did was make model airplane motors originally. This is a pretty old one here. It's a 0.6 cubic inch called a side port. This is a 0.23 cubic inch. If you look real closely on this, you can see these little lugs under here, and that mounts it in the frame of a model airplane like that. And if you look on this, got the same lugs. This was originally designed for big model airplanes, and then they figured they'd try all these other things to do with it, and unsuccessful, but hey, they tried. So the bad features of it are it's unreliable, bad carburetor design, recoil starter's weak, doesn't work very good, and very few parts are available for them anymore. So anyway, we got one more saw in the bad category for you. Okay, here's another one. This one says Sears on it, but it was made by the L.M. Cox Company, whose claim to fame, model airplane motors. This was a model airplane motor too. They were made in 1966 only. 23cc, it's a little bitty thing, nice and light, well balanced and everything, but you know, since they only made it 1 year, there's no parts for them obviously or anything like that. And have a runner like this is pretty rare. But anyway, that kind of is a compendium of the good, the bad, and the no good. You know, a lot of great ideas that didn't work. And I got one more thing to come back and show you. Well, I just wanted to talk about the Clinton here briefly again. Like I say, this is a 1966 chainsaw. Clinton kind of drug their heels on the development of them, and they actually came up with a modern chainsaw. Later on, it was too late. They lost too much market share, and they actually sold off the design. But out of the same era, this saw is a 1967. You can see what a vast improvement it is. I mean, it's small, lightweight, easy to handle. Got a lot of features. You get an oil pump, manual oil pump to put oil on the bar, and plus it has an automatic oiler in it. But this was a game changer for Mccullough and the saw market too, because they made these just until a few years before they shut down. There's zillions of them still out there on the job. So anyway, that's why Mccullough was the leader in the chainsaw industry. They're always making stuff better and improving. And now, just for one last thing here, this saw weighs 28 pounds. And we'll compare it to what this saw weighs. 29.5 pounds, so 1.5 pounds more for this great big powerful 103cc chainsaw versus this 77cc homeowner's play saw. Max or best.